No. All right, and let me just make sure I have the chat box open for anyone who wants to ask questions about the event. There we go. All right, welcome everybody to the UF Association of LGBTQ plus Alumni panel focusing on creating families. Thank you all for coming and joining us. Also, happy Pride. As part of our first ever Pride Month and series of events going on throughout the month, this is our second event, our first virtual panel of the month. We have another one coming up later that I will outline at the end of our meeting. I think everyone on here is pretty familiar with each other, but just in case, my name is Gordon Van Owen. I am the president of the affiliate group, and I'll be moderating tonight's panel. Before we get started, if any questions come up during the panel, please use the chat to post your questions, and then we will have a Q&A session at the end of the pre-scheduled question section of the panel. Also, if you have not yet visited our website, please do so. It is www.uflgbtqalumni.com, or you can follow this short URL here. I will copy it and put it in the chat. As you all know, we are an affiliate group of the University of Florida Alumni Association. So if you are also so inspired by our panelists tonight, we would appreciate it if you could donate to our scholarship fund. In our first year, our scholarship, our fundraising allowed us to create and award 5 scholarships to UF students this year. And we were able to meet them at the Lavender graduation ceremony in April and celebrate all of their accomplishments. And what a tremendous group of young people that we were able to support for the upcoming school year. Again, just a friendly reminder, please also follow us on social media. We have our Facebook page is up and running, as is our Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. All right, and to frame our conversation for tonight, we are focusing on creating family. The writer Bryn Rebel Henry said, you know, the thing about family is that you can choose it, and I choose you. And as I was thinking about this quote, and I was thinking about our conversation tonight, I was, as corny as this sounds, was really taken back to my first year at UF when I was first starting to come out, and being really afraid of what the consequences of coming out were going to mean for me with regards to my conservative religious family. And when I first heard the phrase chosen family, I felt a sense of hope. And looking at our attendees here tonight, there are a lot of us that I have known for a very long time. And I really appreciate all of you for being a part of my chosen family, whether that's an immediate part of the chosen family or extended. And so thank you all for being here. And I really look forward to the conversation that we're about to have. Now, also want to welcome all of our panelists that will be speaking tonight. I will be bugging you in a couple of minutes to introduce yourselves. But our panelists, in no particular order, are Stephen Cohen, a associate professor of practice at Johns Hopkins University, Sarah Anderson, the nonprofit consultant and children's book author and yoga studio director from Campbell and Company. We also have Adam Higman, who is a partner working in strategic consulting for Press Ganey, and Brian Ruiz, who is a global media lead at Google and is the vice president of our affinity group. So while we are looking at the pictures of you and all of your families, this is where I will ask all of you to introduce yourselves. I will flip ahead to the question slide, and then I will pop back to this slide so we can all admire your families from afar. So if you would, as you introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about who you are, where you live, what do you do today, what did you study at UF, and when did you graduate? And I will add another question to this is, what might be your favorite memory of your time while you were at UF? And I apologize to our panelists in advance. I am not one of those moderators who just runs down the line and goes in a particular order for each question. I will volley this back and forth to folks. Sarah, would you mind starting us off with your introduction?
That sounds great. Thanks, Gordon. And thanks everybody for being here today and for your support of the Alumni Association. I'm Sarah Anderson and I live in Seattle. And currently I am on parental leave. So you'll hear more about that when I talk about my family. So it's hard to kind of remember what I do for a living. But when I am at work, I am a consultant at Campbell & Company, which is an organization that works with nonprofits on fundraising consulting. I've been with them for about 15 years. And as Gordon mentioned, I also have a children's book that I wrote for my nieces a number of years ago. And my wife and I made the somewhat harebrained decision to buy a yoga studio in our neighborhood when it was threatened to go out of business. So we also run a yoga studio on the side, which is like another full-time job sometimes. I studied journalism and graduated in 2005. And a favorite memory from UF actually would probably be before I even came to the school. When I was going on a tour and connected with somebody who worked at the Alligator. She brought me into the Alligator that day, and it was like right around the time of the 2000 election, and we were calling students to talk with them about, what their experience was of voting in this really tumultuous election. And so I got to help her with the story, and it ended up on the front page, and that solidified my decision to go to UF, and I ended up working at the Alligator pretty much the entire time that I was there. So lots of fun memories and very fuzzy memories from those days as well.
Wonderful, thank you, Sarah. Let's send our next introduction to Brian.
Hello, everyone. I think I know most of you, but Brian Ruiz. I, like Gordon said, the vice president of the affiliate group, but also have a family. So I was excited to join the panel. I have been 8+ years at Google. So you can thank me for all those annoying ads that you get on YouTube. That's what I do, work with my clients to get their ads up and running. Been doing that for a while and actually transitioning into a new role at Google July 1st. So it's a little bit crazy. I live in Maplewood, New Jersey, which is right outside of New York City. So I still get to venture in every so often when the kiddos are healthy and in daycare, which is rare at this point because they're always sick, I feel like. And then graduated from UF in 2006 with a bachelor's in advertising. So obviously that's fit in with what I'm doing on YouTube these days. And one of my favorite memories, I would say UC and how it was back in the day, because back in the day we had, I think it was Tuesday nights and it was free after 10 p.m. So we would like do a house party and then all go to UC at 10 to get in, dance for 2 hours and then go home. And that was our gay experience at UF, which obviously has changed for the better, which I'm excited to hear about for the next panel that Gordon will talk about, but that's one of my fondest memories.
Thank you, Brian. Stephen, let's hear from you.
Hey, Gordon. Hello, everybody. I'm Stephen Cohen. Really happy to be back with you. It's been a long time since I've been at a Gator event, so it's really special to be back in this community. So I live in the Baltimore, DC area, and the question, what do you do, is such an interesting one because I used to start with my profession, but now I say that, what do? I try to be the best darn dad and husband that I can be. And becoming a father is, I think, the best decision we ever made, the best thing that ever happened to me and to us. And I think it's such a privilege and a pleasure and a huge responsibility. And I'm sure that's something that all the parents in the room will talk about a little bit more this evening. I was a business administration major at UF. I graduated in 2004. I won't reveal Gordon's age. I'll simply say that we hung out during the time that I was at UF. We'll just leave it there. And I will say that my favorite memory, oh my gosh, I mean, UF made me in so many ways. I just had the most unbelievable experience at UF, but I met two of my very best friends in the whole wide world at UF, being involved in leadership and student organizations there. We met during my freshman year. And what's amazing is we just saw each other at one of my friend's 40th birthday parties, and we're still very close today. And it's really wonderful to think back to all those silly arguments and fun times we had during our college days, and to go forward almost 20 years and to still be friends really frames the power of being a Gator.
Awesome, thank you, Stephen. And Adam, if you would introduce yourself.
Sure. Adam Higman. I'll go down your list of questions here. I live in St. Petersburg, Florida. Actually grew up here, moved around, and then came back. I work for Press Ganey. For those who may not know who they are, if you've ever gotten a survey after going to the hospital or your doctor, it probably came from us. That's the universe we live in. So I run our payer practice within the consulting division, mostly working with large health plans across the country. I just started that a couple of years ago. I used to run our clinical group. I did not do anything to do with healthcare at UF. I was a telecommunications major, so I did broadcast. And my dream was to work in food TV. I did that for a hot minute, and it was less exciting than I thought it was going to be. So moved over to the healthcare side of the world. Graduated in 2005. My favorite memory from Florida, this is going to be a little off color, but I had what we called Tuesday afternoon power hours every Tuesday at like 4 p.m. In bed by 8 p.m. And I don't know, it was stupid, but it was a lot of fun.
Nothing is off color. We're in a safe space here. We are all and all grown, as I say.
Just ignore that recording button.
Right. I also teach yoga in my spare time, so I love that you own a yoga studio. So
I also love the J School representation on the panel today. All right, everybody. So as we move, just to kind of preface, like I mentioned before, when I moderate these panels, I'm not one of those types of moderators that will go, here's a question, everybody answer it. Next question, everybody answer it. I like to keep my panelists on their toes. So I will review the questions first, and then I'll ask someone to answer one, and then we will kind of volley around a little bit from there based on what you have to say in your answers, and then making connections to what other people have said in their previous answers. So just to review the questions. One is just tell us about your family journey, how your family came to be.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey, Gordon, I don't think Pam knows that we can all hear her. You might be able to mute her.
Yeah, it's a Zoom call from the University of Florida, some sort of inclusivity thing. I'm just trying to.
There we go. So tell us about your journey to creating your family. If you have had any struggles in creating your family that you would like to share, if so, what were they and how did you persevere through them? I told you guys my grumpy bulldog would make an appearance. How did you navigate conversations with your partner? What advice do you have to someone trying to build their own family? And then finally, if you could go back in time and give yourself advice, what would it be? Okay. So I'll scroll through the questions one more time just to give everyone a chance to think a little bit. So first one is just tell us about your family. We all saw the photos already, so we're excited to learn more. Tell us about your journey to creating your family. Did you have any struggles building your family that you're comfortable sharing? And if so, what were they and how did you persevere through them? How did you navigate conversations with your partner? What advice do you have for someone trying to build their own family? And finally, the infamous time machine question. If you could go back in time and give yourself advice, what would it be? So let's start with our first question for our first panelist speaker. Stephen, tell us a little bit about your family.
Sure. Well, I am married. I've been with my husband for almost 10 years now. And we have a beautiful 11-month-old son named Benjamin. He is just an amazing little boy. Just a handsome, curious, alert people person. And he brings me so much joy every day. You know, there's so much here that we could explore. I'm interested, as happy as I am to share, I'm also very interested to learn. I think that's one of the themes about being a good parent and being part of our community is that we have to do things a little bit differently. And so part of it is teaching others, but a lot of it is learning from other parents and figuring out what's worked and what hasn't worked, and trying to do what feels right and is best for you and your family and what you're trying to achieve in life. I'll just get it started with a couple themes, a couple ideas, and let some panelists maybe bounce off some of these. When I met my husband, one of the things we both agreed upon is that we wanted to be fathers. And early on, we knew that was something that we both wanted. I think becoming a father, though, was a little bit more challenging. There's the desire to want to be a parent, and then actually doing it is a whole different thing. We took the surrogacy route. And for those of you who are not familiar, surrogacy is very expensive. And it is most difficult for two men to have a baby for obvious reasons. But there are wonderful organizations out there like Men Having Babies and others, which are very supportive of these journeys. One of the things that we've been very lucky to have is a small group of other parents who we've been able to rely upon and learn from, who have helped us work through some of the challenges of being an LGBT parent. But it is the most wonderful thing we've ever done. And it has helped me become more selfless, more humble, more patient. And I think it's frankly helped me be a better person. And I really encourage all of you who are thinking about being a parent to go for it. It's worth the struggle, the sacrifice, the tears, because it transforms you into a better version of yourself. Gordon, I think I'll just start with that. Being the first is always tough because there's so many places to start, but I just wanted to provide some themes maybe that others can jump off of. And then depending on where we go, I'm happy to share a little bit more about the journey itself.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen. Brian, I saw you nodding your head quite a bit while Stephen was talking. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience and your family?
Let me unmute myself. We're 2.5 years in and I'm still messing up. So yeah, so like Stephen, I went through surrogacy. We have 2 babies. We have a 2.5-year-old and a 1-year-old. Our journey, like Stephen, was tough, right? Like 2 men, so you have to. We always say the egg in the oven. We have to get both, right? And so we ended up going down that journey. And so we have a little girl and a little boy. And our little boy just turned 1 this last week. So I went all in on the birthday party since we haven't been able to do that for a while because of the pandemic. But I will say the reason why I was nodding my head was because there's the idea of becoming a parent and then there's becoming a parent. And it's very, very different, right? When you become a parent, like you're in it and it's very different. And, the hard truth is that 80% of it's very hard and 20% of it's on social media. Right. And the beauty of it. Right. And so people don't see the 80% that's happening on the background. And so I think that's the part. And Stephen, I won't talk for you, but my opinion is that's the part that makes you stronger. Right. The 80% that no one sees. We could talk definitely more about it. I can go in more detail, but just, raising 2 kids, especially going from 1 to 2 was such a culture shock for us. It was nice to have 2-on-1. And all of a sudden 2-on-2 is now full on sports and it's 1-on-1 and it's nonstop. So it has made me a better person. I've become a lot calmer in most situations. But it's been tough and rewarding at the same time.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. Now, I know from some earlier conversations, Sarah, you have a newborn at home. Tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah. So my wife and I have been together for 17 years. Her name's Elizabeth, and I'll probably refer to her a bit. And we have technically 2 children. Very unorthodox. We have an older adopted kid who's 27 now, so it's hard to even use the word kid for Tam, but we adopted them when they were 23 years old. They had aged out of foster care and had been a family friend, had done dog sitting for us and house sitting. And we just got really close with Tam and decided in 2018 to go through a formal adoption process. So I started my parenting journey with like FAFSA forms and apartment hunting, which was a little bit different for me, and kind of figuring out how to parent someone who's not that much younger than me. And then 12 weeks ago, I gave birth to Maisie, who is just an absolute joy. And I've been on parental leave for a while and just kind of learning how to be a mom and learning how to just take joy in that 20%, Brian. I think you're absolutely right. Like it is so hard and it is so wonderful all at the same time. So yeah, I'm gone from apartment hunting parenting to dirty diapers and burping and marveling at the fact that Maisie figured out yesterday how to put her toys in her mouth. So that's a little bit about my family.
Thank you, Sarah. And Adam, it is your turn. Tell us about your family.
Sure. So a little different. I have a 7 and a 9-year-old, 7-year-old little girl, Clara, and a 9-year-old boy, Sam. So I came out later in life, and so did my ex-wife. So she, if you saw in that previous picture, that's her partner, ironically named Mary. My boyfriend's named Joe. So we, of course, broke up and then went with Joseph and Mary. So we co-parent together very effectively. She lives just across the street from me in our little neighborhood. But 7 and 9-year-old, they're precocious, they're awesome. Did it the old-fashioned way when we were still together. No kind of issues there, but a whole kind of plethora of other issues after coming out, because you don't have to think about coming out to your kids, but that's something that we had to do. So it was an experience, but fun, and they're awesome and super supportive. And I will say, for those of you with younger kids, it gets 1,000 times better once they're in elementary school. My kids get themselves up in the morning, they dress themselves, they make their own breakfast, and like those little moments, make parenting that much better. But they are not old enough that we have any kind of conflict at this point, any major conflict, I should say. Like I still get hugs, I still get cuddles on the couch. We're not quite to the teen years yet.
Adam, don't worry. I'm a high school English teacher, and those moments of hugs do still happen. So don't they do still come. So I
can't give up hope. Okay.
Don't give up hope just yet. So hearing the four of you kind of introduce your family dynamics to all of us, I'm noticing a thread line or theme where I might combine two of my questions together, if that is okay. All of you kind of mentioned your journey to becoming a family. I know we have a few folks who went through the surrogacy route. Someone else went through the more traditional way of having children. But all of you also mentioned some struggles that have come with that, whether that's in the transition to becoming parents, the learning how to become parents, the relationship dynamics that also change with that. And let's also not forget, our partners are also part of the family. So we can talk about that process as well. So let's talk about the journeys to creating families and any struggles or obstacles that might have come in the way there. Okay. So Brian, why don't we start with you for this one, and then we will go from there.
Yeah, thank you. So the journey was, for us, thankfully, we were lucky that it was pretty painless, right? In that, like, we were able to, for the most part, get an egg donor, surrogate, et cetera. We worked through an agency. But I will say the start of it was just financial, right? Like for us, like starting a family is expensive. People, when they have kids, like having kids is expensive, but we have to front load and like pay just to have them. And now that they're here, they're the same expense as even like a couple that went through the same regular way of making children, or not regular, but more man-woman. So that was hard. And then I would say our journey was like figuring out how Adam and I, my partner, could just come together, right? Like there was a lot of conversations that we never knew we had to have before even starting a family. So first was picking an egg donor, right? Our agency has this whole Rolodex of egg donors to choose from. And we were just starting to go in there and just started picking people. And we were just like, well, this feels like, it feels like dating in a really weird way. Like you're like online dating, but for eggs. And so we just try to figure out like a way that we can come together and actually make it a fun process versus like, I want this person, I want this person. And we were able to figure out a way to do that. But it was just a constant open line of communication that really helped us through the process. But then even right before we got our surrogate, there's a lot of contracts, which I'm sure Stephen can also attest to, that it was just like, you have to have all these conversations before you even are pregnant, right? So like we had to talk about like what our stance was on abortion, what our stance was on things in labor, because it's her body, it's our baby. So we have to all agree before we even start the process. And I think that was where it was heavy. It was very heavy, right? Like, and I don't think we really fully understood how heavy it was before even getting pregnant. And the idea when, like, again, we were so excited about the process, but even before you're pregnant, you have all this weight on your shoulders. And then on top of that, you do your egg transfer and then you have to wait. And there's a stress there of if you're even pregnant. So I would just say for us, it was just a lot of heavy things to front load financially, emotionally. And then, the end result is obviously worth it, right? We have two beautiful babies who are thriving, healthy, but the front part of it was just a lot harder, and there's not many resources out there to help. And so it was tough.
Yeah, I'll bounce off that, Brian. I really connect to what you said about front loading. If you're going to pursue surrogacy or even adoption, there are a lot of steps that you have to take before you actually get to the kid part. And for me, I'm a professor. My personality is very much about following rules and steps. I mean, that's kind of what you're trained to do as you go through the academic process, getting a PhD, becoming a faculty member. So this was very natural in some ways. There are a series of steps and things you have to do, but it never hit me. You're just reading forms and signing forms and committing and saving large amounts of money and figuring out what an escrow account is and looking for an egg donor and a surrogate. And then one day, you're in the hospital. And for us, we got to be in the room when the surrogate gave birth. And I almost, I'm not an emotional guy, but that moment to me brings me to such a happy place. And then you see this beautiful, healthy baby pop out. And you're in shock. You're like, oh my God, that is our son. And in my case, I got to cut the umbilical cord, which I didn't even want to do. I didn't even know that I wanted to be in the room. I was kind of freaking out about what that would be like. And then they hand you this child. I mean, you have to understand how life-changing that is and how beautiful it is. And that's what this was all about. And I think you sort of forget about that. You get lost in that. It just becomes administrative. And then one day you have this child and your whole world changes and you have to navigate all these things they never taught you, all these things that you never understood until you realize that this little being is completely reliant on you in every single way. Literally, this little baby can't do anything. And they're looking at you with these beautiful eyes, and you are their whole world. I did not understand any of that until I became a dad. I mean, all the advice I got was beautiful and helpful and wonderful in so many ways. But then you have this child and you just become a different person, and your job becomes less important. And all your plans become less important because this little child needs you. So you go from being afraid of a dirty diaper to like embracing it and realizing, you know what, it smells and it's horrible, and you just get over it and you just learn to. I didn't want to touch a dirty diaper before I became a dad. I mean, I refused to. In fact, I didn't want to change my sister's kids. I didn't want to look at poop. And then you just own it. It's just part of your life, and you just get over it and you realize that you love every moment of your child holding the bottle for the first time, or army crawling, or trying to walk or feed him or herself. It's just so beautiful and makes it all worth it. So I guess it is all to say that you've heard there are different routes to becoming a parent. And by the way, I want to include those of you who maybe will do it alone. There are folks who do it without a partner, and that's very brave as well. And whether you have a partner or not, or whatever route you choose to do it, it's that joy, it's that moment, whether you adopt an older child, you start with a child from birth, or both, or some other way, that you have to keep in mind why you're doing it. It's that the struggle and the joy together. It's not one or the other, it's both. And both of those helps us all become better, stronger people.
Sarah, I noticed your comment in the chat. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, just what you're describing is just so my everyday right now. My wife is on, she's also a professor and she's on sabbatical, but doing a lot of research right now. So she's doing quite a bit of work. And while I'm on leave, I'm just, I'm primary parenting. So that's every day for me is like dirty diapers and just looking into those big, beautiful eyes. So I'm feeling that. But a little bit about sort of the journey for creating our family. Elizabeth knew pretty much from the time we had started dating that she wanted to be a mom, and I wasn't so sure. So it was kind of this thing that we danced around for a long time of, when are we going to do it? Are we going to do it? How will we become parents if we decide to? And we finally decided that once we moved out here to Seattle and got settled in, that Elizabeth was going to get pregnant. And then she was diagnosed with breast cancer. So those plans went on hold. And her cancer treatment meant that pregnancy was no longer an option for her. She's totally fine now. She's been healthy for several years, but pregnancy was taken off the table for her. So we started talking about, well, what are some other ways that we might go about becoming parents? And along that same time, we ended up adopting Tam, not, as sort of like a parallel track, because we knew we wanted to raise a kid and not just be parents to a 23-year-old. But that process, for anybody who's ever, interested in, talking about chosen family, adopting an adult, a legal adult, is a very simple process. And, that ended up being quite easy for us to do. And just, becoming part of Tam's family and having them become part of our family was a really beautiful thing. We were considering adopting, a younger child as well. And we went through all the discussions of like, well, what age kid would we want to adopt? How would we go through that process? We talked about potentially doing foster care to adoption, and started the training program for that and kind of going through the process, for what that would look like. And, for us, we found that it really rubbed us the wrong way that in order to become the legal adopted parents of a foster child, we'd have to be rooting against the birth parents, that we'd be really, rooting for them to not reunify with their kids. When that's really also, in most cases, ultimately what the goal is for those kids. So it felt, no disparagement to anybody who does go that route, because foster care is a wonderful, beautiful thing, but it felt to us like it would be too much of an emotional roller coaster and too much of a potential heartbreak. So we took that option off the table and kind of went back on hold. And then we started talking about what, would I be interested in getting pregnant? Were we going to become parents? It felt at that point like we weren't, going to have a kid of our own. And I started talking with my therapist, honestly, about it a lot, and really worked through a really specific book called The Baby Decision that just, works through these different questions about, what would it be like to be a parent? How do I feel about the idea of being pregnant? All of that. And ultimately decided that it was something that I wanted. We ended up going the route of, we had a short list of guys we knew, and we were about to start asking and talking with one of the guys on the list. We were saying, we're thinking we're going to go the pregnancy route, because he had adopted a daughter. And so he had been telling us a bit about what their adoption process had been like. And he offered to be our sperm donor without me even asking. And that made me so excited. It just underscored for me that this was something that I wanted. And, talking about front loading things, we started to have conversations then about his medical history and, guardianship if something were to happen to Elizabeth or me. All these kinds of questions that you never really talk about with friends, but that in this case we were getting into, and it made our friendship even deeper, and it's really been pretty beautiful. It wasn't quite the old-fashioned way that Adam had, but it was about as low tech as could be in other regards. So it worked out really well.
Can I ask a quick question, Gordon?
Of course.
For Brian and Sarah, what was that process like of, in Brian, your case, finding the egg, and Sarah, sperm? Were you looking for people that look like you and your partner? Were you looking for like the Einsteins of our society with like super good health? Like, what is that like moral, I guess, like you don't want to feel like you're building something. You want to like it to be 100% yours. Like, do you ever feel that like internal like thought process of like, I don't want to like overthink this, and like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to, working through an agency, it does feel sometimes like you're playing God a little bit, which we wanted to leave some things up to chance. However, I will say for the egg donor, we didn't do that. Adam and I were really like honest with each other that like, we obviously knew one of our DNA would be in our child, right? Not both. And that's science. And so we actually looked for an egg donor that actually kind of was a mix of Adam and I together, if Adam and I were mixed. So our egg donor was half Spanish like myself and half white like Adam. And, we had a lot of the same qualities that we had. So we always knew that whoever's DNA would be in our child, there would still be a little bit of us in that child too, right? And so that was our process. Now finding an egg donor was tough. So we actually, we thankfully with our agency, they actually do all the medical conversations ahead of time. So that was the part of the front load we didn't have to deal with, that Sarah had to deal with. They actually pre-screen, and their profiles go beyond just pictures. Like you can actually see like their parents' medical history, which was great. But our first person that we picked actually didn't match up, because her recessive traits and Adam's recessive traits, there was like an issue there. And so there might be an issue down the road. So we ended up not going with her. And we ended up saying, okay, that was tough. We actually decided on one person, and there was a whole Rolodex that we hadn't agreed on. So we actually stepped away, and we each picked 3 people. And then we came together and found that we had actually one overlap again. So we went through that process, and it ended up working out for us. But yeah, it's we didn't want to play God too much, but with the egg donor, we really felt strong about trying to make sure that that person encompassed both of us together. That was a big deal for us at the time, and still is. So now our kids share. They're both the same egg donor, but one DNA is Adam, one DNA is Brian, but they are very similar, so which is kind of nice. So yeah, I see a lot of qualities in Ollie, even though Ollie's Adam's DNA, and Adam sees a lot of qualities in Kenzie. So it's funny, the nature versus nurture. We had that conversation all the time. Like nature does its thing, but nurture, I feel like, is 80%. How you raise your kids.
And I'd say for us, I think if we had gone the sperm bank route, it would have felt a bit like playing God or Build-A-Bear or whatever. But we knew that we wanted to at least start trying with a friend, rather than going through a kind of donor route, through a sperm bank. And so, we just kind of came up with a short list of guys who we really trusted, and who we knew we could have a conversation like that with, and who we knew, it wouldn't be weird, or it wouldn't damage the friendship, to kind of have that discussion. And then when the guy who was at the top of our list offered, it just sort of cemented the deal. So we worked with a midwife here in town to do some genetic testing to make sure, as Brian referenced, sort of those recessive traits and things like that, to make sure that there weren't any medical issues, that would be a challenge. And he filled out a complete medical history and all of that. But that was about the extent of it. Was really, just making sure that there wasn't anything that was going to be a red flag.
Thank you.
Stephen, I saw your head nodding a little bit. Do you want to add anything in response to Harrison's question?
Sure. It's so interesting talking about this. It's so personal in some ways and so public in others. It's just fascinating to me to be part of this discussion. What I mean by that is family building seems so normal and natural, but in so many ways, what we've experienced isn't. Think about it. We couldn't even, I can't even imagine thinking that I would have been a dad when I was at UF. So it's just incredibly part of this panel. But back to Harrison's question, for us, we were presented with a binder full of women. And that's the best expression I could use because that's literally what we were presented with. You go into the reproductive endocrinologist's office and there are binders on a shelf. And it's like, what kind of woman would you like? And pull it down and you flip through the pages. I mean, that's literally what our experience was like. And I think the point here is there are different ways of going about this. For some, you use an egg bank or a sperm bank, which is an online portal where there are different characteristics that you can filter for, and you can choose anonymously what you want. In our case, the RE, reproductive endocrinologist office, they had an egg donor program as part of their office. And so they actually recruited the egg donors themselves. They knew who they were, they had met them. And so we had a smaller bank from which to choose, but we liked that curation. It made it a bit more personal for us. All the egg donors likely came from a certain region. And so we didn't choose from thousands of options. Maybe we had, 100 options or fewer. Maybe when it came down to it, fewer than 50. But the way that my husband and I thought about it is who would we date? Who would we want to date? What are the qualities of the person that we would want to marry? And we thought about what we liked about each other. We thought about if we were attracted to women and we wanted to date a woman, what were some of the qualities of that woman that we were looking for? Kind of like, what kind of person do you want to hang out with and be with? That was our main driver. And then to what Brian and Sarah said, you want to think about the health profile of the person you might work with. Everyone's got something. And what are the things that you're comfortable with, and what are the things that are not comfortable to you or to your partner? And that helped us make our selection. I mean, for us, I'll just share, I remember we were down to two. One was a little more of a party girl type, and one seemed like the girl next door. And we chose the girl next door. That to us is what we wanted. So you have to sort of say, hey, what, and then there's science. And for those of you who believe in a God, there's God or some larger force or whatever you want to call it, that plays a role. And as my physician friend likes to say, what you get may be nothing like you and maybe all like the egg donor, or what you get may be entirely like you and nothing like the egg donor, or some combination of both. And Sarah, for you, this would be, of course, the same if you reverse the roles and talked about the sperm donor. So just realize you can go through this whole process and get a child that may not be like you at all. And that's what you have to realize when you do any sort of sperm or egg type of process.
So Stephen, you picked the hottest person.
We picked the what? The hotness?
Yes, that is what I heard from
the party girl was super hot.
The party girl was hotter, but girl next door.
Yes, she was
safer. Okay.
She was the kind of the guy, and maybe our case, Harris, that's not fair, I'm not sure. But in my case, I'll just speak for me, the guy who I'd pick up at UC, right? He was the hot guy who, was a lot of fun on the dance floor. And a lot of people picked that guy, but we did not. Because we would not want to date that guy. We'd want to hang out with that guy, maybe. I'll just leave it at that, but we wouldn't necessarily want to date that guy.
Thank you. I appreciate your candor.
I'll just say Maisie was definitely born with my friend's hairline. So, there you have it.
That was great. Thank you. So Adam, I'm going to pick